Haskalah was an extensive intellectual movement among the Jews of Central and Eastern Europe, with a certain influence on those residing in Western Europe and Muslim lands. Active from the 1770s to the 1880s, the Haskalah advocated integration of the Jews into their surrounding societies, encouraging among others the adoption of local vernaculars, secular studies and economic productivization. Concurrently, the movement promoted a Jewish cultural revival, manifested mainly in the creation of modern Hebrew literature. In its various stages, the Haskalah had a key role in the modernization of European Jews. Its proponents, the Maskilim, advocated and implemented social, educational and ideological reforms in the private and public spheres of Jewish society. Seeking transformation while maintaining Jewish separateness, they clashed both with the conservative rabbinical elite, which attempted to preserve traditional values in their entirety, and those who aspired for total assimilation. Characteristics: the Haskalah was a diverse phenomenon, which spread in different regions across several generations. Even the name itself was only systematically applied from 1860, when the newspaper Ha'amalotz added it to its motto, though derivatives of maskil and the like were already used much earlier. Yet its proponents did have common features and a sense of self-identity. Those derived from their connection with the first Maskilic Center in Berlin. The works of its leaders, among them Moses Mendelssohn, Isaac Seitanau and Naphtali Herz Wessely, were reprinted and reread by subsequent generations, with each adding to the literary canon of the next. This reflected one of the mainstays of Haskalah, the major achievement of which was the revival of Hebrew for secular uses. Kohelet Musar, published for a short while by Mendelssohn in 1755, was the beginning of modern Hebrew literature and the earliest periodical in that language. The Maskilim renewed interest in Hebrew grammar, a topic relatively neglected. Historians describe the movement as basically a republic of letters, centered around its printing houses and consisting of their readership. The Haskalah's main motivation and aim was the modernization of the Jews. In accordance with the rationalistic and liberal ideals of 18th and 19th centuries, members of the movement sought to acquaint their people with European culture, have them adopt the vernacular language of their lands, and integrate them into larger society. They opposed Jewish reclusiveness and self-segregation, called upon to discard traditional dress in favor of the prevalent one, and preached patriotism and loyalty to the new centralized governments. They acted to weaken and limit the jurisdiction of traditional community institutions, the rabbinic courts, empowered to rule on numerous civic matters, and the Board of Elders, which served as lay leadership. The Maskilim perceived those as remnants of medieval discrimination. They criticized various traits of Jewish society, such as child marriage, traumatized memories from unions entered at the age of 13 or 14 are a common theme in Haskalah literature, the use of anathema to enforce community will and the concentration on virtually only religious studies. Origins: as long as the Jews lived in segregated communities, and as long as all social intercourse with their Gentile neighbors was limited, the rabbi was the most influential member of the Jewish community. In addition to being a religious scholar and clergy, a rabbi also acted as a civil judge in all cases in which both parties were Jews. Rabbis sometimes had other important administrative powers, together with the community elders. The rabbinate was the highest aim of many Jewish boys, and the study of the Talmud was the means of obtaining that coveted position, or one of many other important communal distinctions. Haskalah followers advocated coming out of ghetto, not just physically but also mentally and spiritually in order to assimilate among Gentile nations. The example of Moses Mendelssohn, a Prussian Jew, served to lead this movement, which was also shaped by Aaron Halle Wolfson and Joseph Pearl. Mendelssohn's extraordinary success as a popular philosopher and man of letters revealed hitherto unsuspected possibilities of integration and acceptance of Jews among non-Jews. Mendelssohn also provided methods for Jews to enter the general society of Germany. A good knowledge of the German language was necessary to secure entrance into cultured German circles, and an excellent means of acquiring it was provided by Mendelssohn in his German translation of the Torah. This work became a bridge over which ambitious young Jews could pass to the great world of secular knowledge. The Biur, or grammatical commentary, prepared under Mendelssohn's supervision, was designed to counteract the influence of traditional rabbinical methods of exegesis. Together with the translation, it became, as it were, the primer of Haskalah. Language played a key role in the Haskalah movement, as Mendelssohn and others called for a revival in Hebrew, and a reduction in the use of Yiddish. The result was an outpouring of new, secular literature, as well as critical studies of religious texts. Julius First, along with other German Jewish scholars, compiled Hebrew and Aramaic dictionaries and grammars. Jews also began to study and communicate in the languages of the countries in which they settled, providing another gateway for integration. Berlin is the city of origin for the movement. This capital city of Germany had become known as a secular, multicultural and multi-ethnic center, a fertile environment for conversations and radical movements. This move by the masculine away from religious study into much more critical and worldly studies was made possible by this German city of modern and progressive thought. It was a city in which the rising middle-class Jews and intellectual elites not only lived among, but were exposed to previous Age of Enlightenment thinkers such as Voltaire, Diderot and Rousseau. The movement is often referred to the Berlin Haskalah. Reference to Berlin in relation to the Haskalah movement is necessary because it provides context for this episode of Jewish history. Subsequently having left Germany and spreading across Eastern Europe, the Berlin Haskalah influenced multiple Jewish communities who were hungry for non-religious scholarly texts and insight to worlds beyond their Jewish enclaves. Spread. Haskalah did not stay restricted to Germany, however, and the movement quickly spread throughout Europe. Poland-Lithuania was the heartland of Rabbinic Judaism, with its two streams of Misnagdic Talmudism centered in Lithuania and other regions, and Hasidic mysticism popular in Ukraine, Poland, Hungary and Russia. In the 19th century, Haskalah sought dissemination and transformation of traditional education and inward pious life in Eastern Europe. It adapted its message to these different environments, working with the Russian government of the Pale of Settlement to influence secular educational methods, while its writers satirized Hasidic mysticism in favor of solely rationalist interpretation of Judaism. Isaac Ber Levinson became known as the Russian Mendelssohn. Joseph Pearl's satire of the Hasidic movement, Revealer of Secrets, is said to be the first modern novel in Hebrew. It was published in Vienna in 1819 under the pseudonym Obadiah ben Pethahiah. The Haskalah's message of integration into non-Jewish society was subsequently counteracted by alternative secular Jewish political movements, advocating folkish, socialist or nationalist secular Jewish identities in Eastern Europe. While Haskalah advocated Hebrew and sought to remove Yiddish, these subsequent developments advocated Yiddish Renaissance among masculine writers of Yiddish literature variously satirized or sentimentalized Hasidic mysticism. Effects. Even as emancipation eased, integration into wider society and assimilation prospered. The Haskalah also resulted in the creation of secular Jewish culture, with an emphasis on Jewish history and Jewish identity, rather than religion. This resulted in the engagement of Jews in a variety of competing ways within the countries where they lived. These included the struggle for Jewish emancipation, involvement in new Jewish political movements, and later, in the face of continued persecutions in late 19th century Europe, the development of a Jewish nationalism. One source describes these effects as the emancipation of the Jews brought forth two opposed movements. The cultural assimilation, begun by Moses Mendelssohn, and Zionism, founded by Theodor Herzl in 1896. One facet of the Haskalah was a widespread cultural adaptation, as those Jews who participated in the Enlightenment began in varying degrees to participate in the cultural practices of the surrounding Gentile population. Connected with this was the birth of the Reform movement, whose founders such as Israel Jacobson and Leopold Zunes rejected the continuing observance of those aspects of Jewish law which they classified as ritual, as opposed to moral or ethical. Even within Orthodoxy, the Haskalah was felt through the appearance of the Musar movement in Lithuania and Torah im Reich Eretz in Germany. In response, enlightened Jews sided with Gentile governments in plans to increase secular education among the Jewish masses, bringing them into acute conflict with the Orthodox who believed this threatened Jewish life. Another important facet of the Haskalah was its interests to non-Jewish religions. Moses Mendelssohn criticized some aspects of Christianity, but depicted Jesus as a Torah-observant rabbi, who was loyal to traditional Judaism. Mendelssohn explicitly linked positive Jewish views of Jesus with the issues of emancipation and Jewish-Christian reconciliation. Similar revisionist views were expressed by Rabbi Isaac Ber Levinson and other traditional representatives of the Haskalah movement.